Hello, everyone, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Tumbly Drunk, and tonight on episode 43, we'll be updating you on what all of our hosts have been up to really over the course of this past month since we have been on a bit of a hiatus. We'll get you caught up on everything that's been going on between the fantasy OWL platforms because we've had a couple of hiccups along the way. We'll update you on things that are going on with some of the teams and so much more. So before we jump into the agenda for tonight and introduce you to these merry band of misfits beside me, let me just take a quick moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners. So, as you guys can tell, it is all hands on deck. Ramses was actually on time today, and, as I mentioned earlier, all it took was him being forced to never leave the house. So, congrats to Ramses on that front. But, obviously, there's been a lot going on with, COVID-19, the ongoing pandemic, a lot of shut ins being in place, a lot of people working from home, and it's definitely been an adjustment for everyone at this point. So before we actually get into the news, I want to just kind of get caught up with what you guys have been up to since really our last episode. So, we're talking a little over 4 weeks at this point. So, Ramses, let me start with you. What's been going on in your end of the world over in Cali?
It's been back and forth. It was really sunny and nice and perfect for 2 weeks, and then it's been super dark and gray and rainy for 2 weeks, which is exactly the kind of climate you want to have when everything seems like it's falling apart. So it's been good. Right now, just working on some stuff. Push the Point's officially 1 year old, so we did some special stuff with that. With Bob's going to be on in a couple weeks or so. So getting stuff together, trying to take some time for personal betterment since it's not like I can do a lot of other stuff. And I'm
I
playing.
I appreciate the fact though that you're leaving Edinar out of that. you're pulling in some of the other mash those buttons guys, and then poor Ed's just sitting in the corner there, being like,
Ed's
"What the f, man?"
well because the godfathers of Push the Point are Blazing Bob and Ja. So that's
Yeah, but the thing is you have to give a special shout out to me at the beginning of
oh.
each podcast, featuring Bob and featuring Ja.
So that happened. We did a
Mm-hmm.
Mash Those Buttons throwdown where myself, Labosco, and Ja played games against Ed and the rest of the Drop and Spicy boys, Kurabara and Kinder, and it went about how you expected, where we played Apex and then Overwatch, and we were very dumb to not assume it was going to be a tie. Um, we were very dumb to not assume it wasn't going to be a tie. So they beat us really badly. We had one really good game to start off in Apex, and then we were just garbage for the rest of it. They in 2 matches I think beat our
Mhm.
entire score for 5. Um, we
You
did that.
also, by the way, completely lost it for your whole team. You single-handedly,
True.
not anyone else. You single-handedly
We'll get to that.
cost your
We'll
team.
get to that. We stomped them really hard in Overwatch, excuse me, and we tried to do a tiebreaker in Jackbox, which was pretty good. We lost the first game. It all came down to the question of if whether or not Jeffrey Rush and Gary Oldman were included in the People's Sexiest Man Alive list of the '90s, and I tried to cover my bases and say no, and then I got I got yelled at and subtweeted by people on my own tweet, which was fun. So it was
And
a good time.
the best thing is he could have answered one yes, one no, and it would have guaranteed him a victory. The only way we win is if he answers both of them as yes, and he did it.
It was one of the more frustrating moments in my life.
I
But
loved it because I'm the one who snuck past him for the win.
so yeah, we have to thank now on every episode of Push the Point. We have to shout out the quote unquote best podcast on the network, Dropping Spicy. And I'm playing a lot of Teamfight Tactics, so that's pretty much me.
Awesome. Bob, let me throw it over to you. What have you been up to here over the course of this past month?
Uh, was in heavy depression mode
Hmm.
for the first part of it. Then I decided, to get ahead of it, and I'm building a bunker in, the backyard of my apartment complex. Like they're looking to be a little weird, but it's safe is safe. So I've got 200 pounds of rice, bunch of canned peaches. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I am pretty stocked up though. I got pretty stocked up before the craze. Like when the toilet paper started to go, I said, well, I'm gonna go get stuff that actually matters. So I got a ton of things that don't go bad fast. Been doing a lot of gaming, and just recently been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, which has just been fantastic. Been playing Overwatch, started alt on World of Warcraft Classic. So I'm playing a mage, and I'm taking AoE pulls of like 150 mobs. It's pretty crazy, but it's a lot that's been figured out in Classic WoW. So I can just pull like entire dungeons and know how to like kite them back and forth. It's definitely tough and challenging, but it's been pretty fun to do that. And yeah, that's about it. Been watching a ton of shows. Definitely watched the Tiger King. Everybody needs to watch that. So I don't know.
That's if it can hold your attention. I've tried to watch it, and it's much better as just background noise than like actual television.
I watched it while I was doing AoEing with the mage. So I just combined. I watch a lot of documentaries and things of that nature while I'm doing World of Warcraft, because it's like it satisfies that multitasking part of my brain where I'm not okay with just doing one thing at once.
Yeah,
What about you, Ed? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, I know Ed has definitely been keeping busy amidst like a move that's been happening over what seems like the past couple of weeks. How much did the pandemic kind of like play into that or impact that?
None. Legit, it had no.
I feel like movers would have been cheap as heck.
No, they are busy as hell.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are trying to move right now.
Yeah. So like I bought a new condo, moved.
Congrats.
Thanks. I had to buy the most annoying thing was I had to buy appliances. And they were so busy delivering appliances. It took them a week just to get back to me to set up a date.
Oh damn.
Because they just didn't have time. So that was crazy. That was probably the biggest inconvenience with all of this. But yeah, no, the move was not that crazy. Like as far as dealing with the coronavirus and stuff like that. But I'm also working from home 8 hours a day. I'm fortunate enough in a job where I can do my whole job working from home. So I've just been doing that, and then the move, and then now back to 4 podcasts a week, and playing games.
There's Arena podcast coming out as well.
Oh God, that is not coming out. I did Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes podcast, and that was fun, but I'm not doing mobile game podcasts ever again.
Star Wars Galaxies, huh?
Yeah, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's a collection game. It's super fun, but if you haven't been playing it for a while, you can't get it. It's 100% gated.
Gotcha.
Like, don't even attempt it. Like, I know people who have put 6 figures into the game.
Clash of Clans there for you.
Yep. But yeah, I played a little bit of Valorant, played a lot of Apex, been playing a lot of Hearthstone, a little bit of Overwatch tossed in there from here and there. Overall, just having a good time. I'm excited. I got the email today. I think Totem, you probably did too. OW Recap might have too. About Twitch watch parties.
Mm-hmm.
They're now rolling out you can stream Amazon Prime content on your Twitch channels and like stream it. So I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of excited to do that. But you can't do it through like OBS or anything like that. Because you can't use any like recording devices.
I wonder if that's how Twitch was doing the whole thing with the the NFL and like Tim the Tap Man last season, like Thursday night games, Tim would watch the Thursday night game and give Tim the Tap Man commentary on the game. And you
Yeah.
could watch it like that instead of watching it with, the regular commentary.
Yeah, and they delete all. Nobody's allowed to clip stuff like that. All that stuff is disabled. But I'm excited. There are definitely some good movies out there on Amazon Prime we can watch.
Totem, how are you doing?
It's been pretty good. Kind of low key. Work's been really back and forth. Like I know around when the school started to close, obviously a lot of like mass panic buy-in at the grocery store. So we were essentially doing like Christmas like business essentially in regards to like actual sales for basically like a week straight, and then the shut-in kind of like got put in place in Illinois, and now it's just kind of been not necessarily like a ghost town, but it's definitely been a situation where the shoppers are more like spread out over the course of the week rather than kind of like going in every day. So like there's a lot of like lulls kind of like in between, so that's kind of been a major adjustment. But outside of that, obviously playing a ton of games. Hearthstone Battlegrounds has definitely been at the top of that list. And part of that is because Edinar and I have been doing a Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast, which we actually just went to a like a Twitch format here this past week. So that's Thursday nights. So having a ton of fun with that. Been climbing pretty well on the ladder in that regard. Like I finally hit 6K on the main account. My alt account is catching up at like 5,700. And I completely destroyed a rival Hearthstone podcast in Battlegrounds when we were doing duo queues this past week. So I have all the bragging rights. And I'm looking forward to absolutely crushing Jay from Bob's Tavern Cast. Probably again tomorrow when he, quote, tryhards. We'll see whether or not his average placement is going to get bumped up at all. But it's been a ton of gaming here as of late. But honestly, like I feel like the biggest adjustment for me is basically, my Fridays, which is normally like my one day to socialize, because I'd usually go out to the movies.
You go to the movies and
Obviously,
stuff.
that's not happening, and of course, they're experimenting with like in-theater rentals, which are essentially you paying what would be like the price for like a digital purchase for like the actual media, but it's only a rental, so you still have like the 48 hours on say like Amazon Prime, if you're watching it through Prime Video. As opposed to just owning it outright. So hasn't really been too much out in that regard that like I would have seen in theaters yet, because most of the stuff that they threw on there initially was stuff that had already been out for a couple of weeks. So it's just been like kind of a lull period for me with like new releases. So it's probably going to be an ongoing thing for at least the foreseeable future. I don't know what the plans are for like other rollouts in that regard. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm curious, Totem. At your work, are they gating? Like basically, like Costco here, you have to get in a line, and
Okay.
like once like 20 people leave, they'll let 20 people in,
No,
or
we're
like
not
10
doing
leave and
that.
10 in.
Obviously, at least at my store, a lot of stores like around the area have like set up like senior citizen times to shop, where like we kind of like close out the store for other customers. Not that like we're kicking people that aren't senior citizens out, but like we do that. We have the aisles in like one-way directions to kind of like spread out the pattern
I've seen
flow.
that. Yeah, I've seen that
We
too.
also have like markers that are like 6 feet apart for like the counters and stuff, but nothing in regards to limiting the amount of people that are entering the store. Now that being said, like in regards to like writing the orders, a lot of the grocery stores still have like a set limit in regards to what they can order. Some of the warehouses are still having issues keeping stock on some of the essential goods. And a lot of people are going stir crazy at home, obviously, because we've all been going through, the same ordeal here. So people are getting a little impatient, and that definitely takes its toll out on the retail workers because people are frustrated across the board. These retail workers are a lot of them working overtime, but the amount of people that just assume like, oh, we just suddenly forgot how to write orders is pretty astronomical here as of late.
Did you order a cool mask to wear, like with fangs or something?
I did not know.
I
I
did.
did see on Facebook somebody had one with a bunch of just penises on it, and they're like, if anybody comments on it, that means that they got within 6 feet, so you can pull them out. I'm like, genius.
That's a,
My
that's a good
favorite
idea.
thing are my favorite thing are the like you see the pictures of people in like Florida and a couple other states where it's like people who don't have masks, so they have just like a giant water bottle with the bottom cut out like on top of their head,
It's Florida.
or they'll have
They
like
do
literally like a
the WWE essential business.
essential business.
Okay, it's
That's what
Florida.
That's what happens when the head of the company's wife is on Trump's like super PAC
Yeah,
commission.
it pays you like $11 million or whatever the amount was. Yeah.
Florida.
Congrats to Drew McIntyre, new heavyweight champion, by the way.
70-year-olds and swamp people. That's all that are there.
And
I
people
don't
that
know
eat
about
other
you guys,
people.
but Overwatch has been a weird kind of thing as well because I know personally, like when I've talked with people, the game itself is actually in a pretty good state. I think for everybody who's not in like the top 500, I would say, like the meta seems to be varying a little bit. You can play a lot of stuff. Granted, hero pools are kind of stupid, but the overall attitude with like Overwatch esports is in a significantly low point, considering you have a lot of T2 understandably moving on to Valorant or other esports. And it makes you wonder what's going to happen. It doesn't help things with like that's happening and everyone's already frustrated. And then the games happen on Sunday and there's rolling blackouts in Houston where the team's entirely desyncing and the production gets like stopped for like 10 minutes. And there's stuff going on everywhere. It's a weird time in Overwatch right now. It's kind of hard to be 100% excited, but I think it's just something we have to ride out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of moving parts really over the past several weeks due to the COVID-19 situation. We had a little bit of a lull period where we didn't have any matches, and that was because the Overwatch League was moving to an online-only format. So obviously, during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of esports go into an online format. Heck, even some of the traditional sports league have either gone on hiatus or have gone more in like an esports direction. Like we've seen NASCAR doing iRacing, which is being aired on
And
on TV.
two pro racers have already been suspended or fired for shit they've said.
Yep. I mean, I can't say I'm surprised on that. We've had the NBA doing like the NBA 2K League. Heck, we even saw the NBA here this week airing a game of horse.
Did you watch that?
I heard it was
Complete.
It was legit the most unwatchable thing I've ever seen. I don't know who I felt worse for, me, the viewer, or the poor schmucks who had to watch it and comment on it.
Yeah,
Like the commentators, you're just like, you poor bastard.
It was like they were all streaming from a potato. It was some of the worst video quality. It was like you were watching on like 180p. It was so bad.
From what I've heard though, I think League of Legends is going to be on ESPN now.
Yep. League of Legends will be on ESPN. Couple of other things are slowly going to be coming out from rumblings I've heard in regards to major networks airing more esports, more towards the gaming side of it, the sports games, and less like League of Legends, stuff like that. There are rumblings that there might be a Valorant tournament as well.
Wouldn't surprise me. They're doing a ton of like invitationals.
I just don't understand why they do those. The game isn't even out.
CS is probably the number 2. So you have the two biggest esports right now are League of Legends and CS:GO. You have a new CS:GO made by the people at League of Legends. That means two things. One, it's probably going to be the biggest esport ever. Two, you're taking the two most toxic communities and putting them in to make one super toxic community. And it's like a pyramid of toxicity. And right at the top, you have Valorant. And then you got League of Legends and CS. And then it's like down here, less toxicity is where all the toxic ass people left. So that's where you have like Overwatch and Apex. Like Apex is great. Now we have pleasant people playing Overwatch because all the a-holes, tryhards, are like, screw you guys, I'm gonna go play a real game, play Valorant. Then they move over to Valorant and they generally suck at it. But they're like, oh, I want to get Twitch streamers, so I'm going to talk amazing things about it, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's e-gaming in a nutshell in the past week. From Ed. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Breaking it down, Ed
Perfect.
style.
So obviously there's been a lot of moving parts too, and that does include Overwatch League teams and personnel kind of shifting where their base of operations is. A lot of the Korean teams have went back home to South Korea. I don't know if that was necessarily like to shy away from certain hotspots in the U.S. or if they just want to be closer to home. Maybe it was Korea just handling things better with everything going on. But, you know, it's really like a bittersweet feeling knowing how crucial and pivotal of a year this season is for the Overwatch League, and then, you know, everything going on. And, you know, who knows how the community is going to react, whether or not a lot of the, you know, esports journalists will give a lot of these companies more of a free pass, just due to the circumstances that we have been presented here. But basically, with the online move, it's meant that we've started to see a lot of like similar matches on a week-to-week basis. But it also meant that we were getting to see Chinese Overwatch League games happening a little bit sooner than what we were initially anticipating. And it's been really interesting. Even like the first week, we saw the China like circle of parity already complete, and then you add on the fact that now they're being joined by the Korean team, so you have the London Spitfire, you got the Seoul Dynasty, as well as the Vancouver Titans, who, by the way, lost both of their matches to Chinese Overwatch League teams this past weekend.
You know, I have a question, Totem.
Okay.
Where was Hacksaw this entire weekend? Where was he?
He was sharpening his Dragon Blade.
And how frustrating was it to watch the Runaway Core lose twice on Eichenwald Bridge again?
It was excruciating. It was more of a situation where I'm just like, okay, you run and dive into Brig Bap. Okay. Good luck. It's just like, what's going on? It's
Maybe if Haxel was there, maybe. We have seen carries.
I think we can agree, though, and please, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. I think Shanghai is the best Chinese team right now.
I mean,
Yeah.
statistically,
We talked about that last night on our recap. They're the best.
Around, nothing's ever gonna keep me down.
You're the best around. Nothing's ever gonna stop
Totem
it.
is like, shit, why did we bring this back?
I was just
Bob
like,
and Ed are gonna sing.
I was just waiting. I was like, how long are they gonna keep this up? And then you guys didn't keep going. I'm kind of
Good
disappointed.
note also, as far as the London Spitfire, they're not playing till May. So you have a couple weeks.
It's gonna be like another 2-month hiatus situation, very much like the Vancouver Titans. So maybe that was a bad omen for the Korean talent out there that think that they're just gonna steamroll over some of these Chinese teams. But man, there's a lot of scrappy fights going on in within the Chinese Overwatch League scene, and you know, unfortunately, you know, in these times too, we've had quite a few hiccups, whether it was from disconnects, cats invading caster rooms. We've had consecutive weeks of missing stats from the stats lab. And, we saw weeks 8 and 9 both being delayed, and I kind of like left the status of Fantasy Overwatch League in question where we didn't really know what was going on. The stats lab wasn't updated. And, we definitely feel for Captain Planet. He comes out with this awesome tool with the stats lab. It was doing fairly well. Then, the pandemic hits, everyone's working remotely. And it's been a process, unfortunately, but on the bright side, we can confirm in regards to this past weekend stats, all of that stuff has parsed. It's all in the stats lab. It's all on your fantasy OWL providers. So everything is going according to plan, and hopefully that is a good sign of things to come. But it's been a rough go, and for a while there, we were like, is this gonna be the week that we're gonna come back on the air? It's just like we don't know, because I didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're producing content when we could talk about who to start, who to sit, and all of that stuff, but we never actually knew if those stats would have been available that week, or if it was gonna be another week or two before it actually went through. And it was definitely something that I'm sure a lot of the creators out there have kind of been stressing out over, or yanking their hair out, so to speak.
It's been a little back and forth. I feel bad for D Hulky as well, because we've talked with him where like he'll get his stuff ready and it's like, and no stats. Okay. I know I like had some articles stuff that I was trying to get written, and it was all about the shock, like the week they were really rough. And it's cool. I just need the stats to come out, and like I'll have like the backup for it.
Mhm.
And then the stats never came out. So it's like, I don't know. For a multi-million-dollar company, Blizzard seems to find ways specifically to stumble over really tiny things like this. Granted, there is a pandemic going on. There's a lot of other extemporaneous circumstances, but stuff like I would just love to know the reason why we have so much trouble with stats, because there has to be like really good reasons for it. I just want to, at this point, I would like to know why.
The hamsters aren't running fast enough to keep the ball rolling.
Well, I mean, this isn't the only esports organization that is running like online only tournaments that get stats out there that have real-time stats. And I'm sure they get the stats all the time. They're like Ramsey said, there has to be something going on that we just don't see.
Knock on wood, though. Nobody's had any complete maps missing so far, right?
Would we know?
I mean,
because we used to always find that stuff out by using the app. And
that app they don't ever update anymore.
Yeah, like all right.
Multi-million dollar league, by the way. We can't update our app. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna have to give him a pass, though. I mean, the world is gone to plaid. Like, it's just gone crazy, and like I can see how they've had to divert different resources to different areas. It's a nightmare, especially for all these systems that they were just getting into place and just getting systems going to support them. I mean, I'm gonna have to give them a pass for now.
Yeah, either way, though, obviously there's certain things that we need to keep an eye out for, especially for the players out there that have been using Daily as their platform primarily, and that is, now that we do have these China, OWL teams competing, we have seen the lock timers being pushed earlier and earlier, because a lot of those matches in China, since it is based on a local time, happen at like 1 a.m., 3 a.m. Pacific time. So, be advised, like, those Saturday and like Sunday games to get your lineups in early. And, if you miss a cutoff point, then just focus on that following day. Now, obviously, this week is going to be a little bit different due to the way that the schedule is, which is more spread out. It'd be a lot easier to get the China games in this week since they're kind of like on their own separate days, and those are the only matches happening on said days. But, just keep an eye on when those teams are playing, so you know when you need to submit your lineups. Because I know we've had some issues ourselves with lock timers and only having, 2 or 3 hours by the time I post something in order to, get everyone in. So it's awesome that we're getting the China teams in, but at the same time, it's just like, well, it's a rough go to keep up with those games. I'm sure a lot of us aren't watching them live, just due to how late they are. But it's definitely impacted the daily side of fantasy here.
By the way, games start on Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure to get your lineups in, especially for daily, as early as you can. Don't be like me and give yourself an hour.
Which is annoying as hell, man. Like having to go back to opening up my Thursday and Fridays. Like I was happy with weekends, and I really don't appreciate this part.
No, I think it works better for me because I work every weekend, so I'm constantly playing catch up. At least in this case, after I get home from work, I could just catch up on the VODs for that day, and then not have to go back and catch the prior days. But obviously it's going to impact everyone differently. But it's more spread out this way, so it's 2 games each day as opposed to the 4 and 4 split, or even higher, which we have seen here lately as well.
And I assume that basically they're doing this change for the casting crews, because it's a lot easier to stay up than to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and then some of those Achilles ones, I was like, Achilles was half asleep, for the first map, maybe 2, and then he finally wakes up.
The best is when they've had Brennan and Sideshow doing the early games, because you can just tell how angry Bren is to be awake at that time of night. And it's so deadpan and frustrated.
Oh man.
To be honest, Josh, I don't know what they're doing right here. It's ridiculous. I don't know. It's awful. I have no idea what they're doing.
That's perfect. So outside of that, we've actually had quite a bit of player movement here in these recent weeks. So, Bob, why don't you update us on some of the releases or, just retirements that we have seen?
Well, we've seen Moffin released from Boston. Seems Boston...
He who must not be named 2.
Yeah, Boston seems to be a magnet for players that like underage girls.
Boston and pedophiles.
It's kind of a bummer. Swimmer steps back from competition. Did he give a reason?
That happened today.
Yeah, that
really
happened
recently.
today. He wanted to focus more on streaming, I believe is what he said.
And probably not play Overwatch as much.
Based on the phrasing, it felt like Overwatch was still going to be his primary game, but he wanted to focus more on content creation. But he left it open. So it's not like a move where, it's a complete departure, and he's not just saying, F Overwatch, I'm just gonna switch games or anything like that. But this is someone who essentially lost the starting spot anyway. Here in recent weeks, so he wasn't really seeing the stage regardless. But it does bring the Boston Uprising down to a 6-man roster, so they don't have any substitutes to work in at this point.
I think by league rule, they have to sign 2 more, right?
Yeah, they have to have a total of 8. I wonder how they're going to do that in this pandemic, in these pandemic-y times.
Who plays Overwatch and lives in the Boston area that they could get onto the team?
I mean, honestly, they could pick someone from any place right now because it's all online. As long as they're in the same,
one really laggy Widow player, and then
I know a guy. Really laggy Widow player? This guy.
Boston.
That's not lag. That's just bad.
Hey, you know what? Potato.
Well, and Boston's kind of slid down to where I think everyone would agree they're the de facto number 20 bottom team.
Worst team
we
in the
just need
league,
to get we just need to get the emote ready for Edinar's Twitch.
Well, and even worse is like there were certain players that we like had like somebody like, okay, maybe they'll shine, maybe they'll make it. Like maybe Myunbong is going to be worth it fantasy wise. And from what I remember, he hasn't been huge on points lately because he's on the trash team. None of the tanks have been good. Not Blue Balls Brucin, not no fusions. And then Color Hex is not great. Jerry seems to be the only point scorer, and that has to be against a team like Houston, where they actually have a chance for a map or two, so he can get like one string of pop-offs.
Anyone can put points up against Houston.
Anyone can.
Anyone. And then XC from the Paris Eternal returns to Korea to get treatment for chronic neck pain. I don't know. He's been cramping his neck or something.
When I heard this, I'm just like, doctor said I need a Becchiotomy. Anyone half baked?
Nope.
No half baked fans. All right. He had
I'm
sex
too
with
young
my
for-
mama.
Yeah, and that was really like the second week in a row where the Eternal had a personnel change, because I know Hip also had retired from professional play, and he was the one getting the bulk of the playtime at the flex support position for the Eternal. So now all of a sudden, Gray is the guy getting subbed in, so he's been seeing a ton of playtime. So if you're still holding on to Hip, he's not coming back. Drop him. If Gray's available, obviously pick him up. If not, you are better off looking elsewhere in that regard. But, it's unfortunate. But I guess in, the grand scheme of things, hit scan DPS are banned next week. So I don't think it's going to be a major blow, at least this upcoming
Until they-
week of action. But, Paris has been looking pretty good regardless, with or without XE, and, I'd say they're a lot further progressed than we would have initially anticipated, both from a team perspective as well as how they've been performing in Foul here.
Well, and speaking of bans, there's been some changes to how bans work. Bans are now Overwatch League, Contenders, Path to Pro, and the top end of the ladder. Now, they said high competitive play. They have not said if that's Diamond and up, Masters and up, GM and up, top 500 and up. They haven't given any of that information.
Golden up.
But I mean, with Diamond being the top like 3 to 5% of the game, someone could make an argument that that's high level competitive play, even though it looks nothing like pro play or GM play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because Ashe was one of the choices they could have banned, and that would have just stopped Surefour from playing it on one map on defense. Like, it's a little weird. Ashe had a 20% play rate, and most would agree she's not that great.
But was this like after they had like banned all the hit scan that 1 week?
See, I don't know. That's what Mel said, but I'm not sure. I don't know if they. Oh, you know what they did? They're taking the 2 weeks prior data.
Yeah, because the 1 week it was like all the hit scan, and then a week after that I think it was only the one where they did a tank, a support, and one DPS hero.
Yeah.
So it might play out as it goes on, but that's what they're doing now. And now, basically, it's Sunday night. It resets Monday morning. Pro play, like everyone on the ladder goes by what the current week bans are. They play for what, I guess since there's Thursday and Friday games now, they play for 3 days without knowing what the pros are going to play. And then pro games start, and it all gets averaged together. They're using a weird algorithm to choose who gets banned. But these bans were almost exactly like the first bans we got. Like, I think Moira was banned the first time
I think it
instead
was
of
Moira that
Brigand.
was banned the first time.
So it'll be interesting.
See, hero bans, and I think I've at least said this to Totem because we haven't had an actual show in a while. Hero bans has made fantasy is so impossible. The reason I say that is you don't know who's like before you're like, okay, yeah, this person's going to start, this person's going to start. You could literally tell me anyone would not start this week, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's nothing makes sense. And to top it off, the pandemic, we don't even know what players have good internet, bad internet.
Mhm.
Maybe players get benched because of internet. You know, it's weird.
Yeah, all we know is Boston players will play because they don't have any backups.
Boston
Yeah.
players.
Now,
and
will
then
they get
Mecca and
points?
Roma.
Remains to be seen, but they will be playing.
I would love to see Boston have to like field a 4-man team. That would be hilarious. It'd be the fastest game ever. But maybe whatever team took them on would style on them and leave like 2 people in spawn to like make it a little fair.
They send out just Hacksaw by himself on Genji.
And he can
Hacksaw
nanoblade himself.
with a mercy pocket.
It's the bans for this week are going to be interesting because it's like we said, it's McCree, Widow, Brig, and Ryan all banned. And I don't know, because I've talked to Bob about this on our recap yesterday. A lot of people are feeling that we're going to see a lot of dive because Lucia's still in, but I just don't know if dive is going to be better than if dive is going to be better than Reaper and Torbjorn.
I don't think it's better, but I think a lot of teams are better at it than they are at the bunker style. So I think a lot of teams are going to play it, and you just have to look at the team and just think they're probably going to play dive or they're probably going to play bunker.
Right on. So, outside of that, we've also had a new fantasy option popping up on one of the platforms, which we actually tested out this week, which I think for all of us was our first time trying Draft Royale, which is on the Draft Buff platform. And Ramses, only 3 of us entered. We're not gonna name the person who didn't sign up, but I'm sure everyone that listens probably knows who it is.
I didn't check my phone for like 2 days, like after Final Fantasy came out.
So Draft Royale is interesting because we were talking about this before. I'm still trying to figure out, like, the scores for a lot of people seem a little rough or a little weird. People who've played full games are still only score like Neptuno had like a 3-0 on his one game he played, and he scored 73 points. But then like the scores are a little iffy. I won because even though Hacksaw didn't play this entire weekend, my 4 Outlaws line carried me the entire way. Thank you, Dante. Thank you, Meko. And it makes these weird because it's like it's the best score, of course. So it's gonna take whatever best score you get in the game, and it makes the drafting weird because you have certain players that are highly ranked in fantasy OWL versus players that are highly ranked in this. Like in fantasy OWL, I think you still have like Carpe and Hacksaw and Xe is like your top DPS, and then on Draft Up it's like Doha and Decay.
Smart people.
The rankings are a little bit different. You have to approach with a different strategy each time.
Well, and I wonder if it's just because they just started it up and they don't have as much of a backlog of stats to rate those players. Because if you're rating from week before last, then yeah, Doa and Decay would be the number one fantasy options for the next week because they just freaking destroyed.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Draft Buff or is it Fantasy OWL that takes minus points for deaths?
Draft Buff.
Draft Buff.
So that's also, I would assume, part of it. It's a little bit of a different, you go about it a different way, but Draft Royale works in a currency-based system. So you start out each round, you start out each week with 300 points that you use towards building your team. The average amount of points, like your hard, like average is like 50. And then it goes up or down depending on a couple different factors. I think stuff like their previous performance, and then also whether or not they're playing twice in a week.
Mhm.
I know a lot of the teams that, like a lot of the players that are really good and are playing twice in a week were very highly priced. And you go through, you build your roster, it's your standard just 2-2-2, and they tally the points at the end of the week. Well, throughout the weekend, you get your final score once all the points come in. And it's pretty good. It's very intuitive. Doing stuff with the Draft Buff app, excuse me, is really smooth. I enjoy it. And I'm still getting the hang of it because this week especially was kind of hard where you only had like maybe 2 or 3 teams playing twice and they were all pretty crappy teams, so you had to kind of scramble to put a team together, and then to make all the prices work is a little rough, but it's a nice alternative. What did you guys think?
I would say in this case, when I'm like I compare it to daily fantasy Overwatch League, because I mean essentially they're both currency based systems where you're essentially just looking to build 6. I know I'm at the point now in daily where I have an idea of what the contract costs for, I would say, 90% of the players at least that I would want to play. I know off the top of my head, and I would know to slot them in for that week. Whereas when I was going into here, I had no idea what the totals were going to be for anyone. So I didn't really factor in multiple games versus only playing a once in a week. And even doing that, I was still having to think about who I was drafting next as opposed to just kind of like auto slotting in players. Now, that being said, I did not fare that well. I did get 3rd. I don't have my app open, so I can't tell you who I fielded.
I can tell you who you fielded.
Okay.
So
Wasn't Hoxel on my team and he didn't play?
No,
Or
you
was
like,
that you? Or, okay. I
that
probably
was
played
me in
people that were
Fantasy
split.
OWL.
Okay.
That was me in Fantasy Owl. No, you like, here's the thing that's weird is that like everybody here like drafted pretty good teams. I actually don't really know how I scored higher than you guys, because I know Totem, you ran Leave, Jinmu, Bruce, and I understand. Gushue, Masad, Neptuno, and then Ed, you ran Rascal, Jerry, Bruce, that's where they got you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Beast, Alarm, Arc, which by the way, Alarm is the fantasy star of this weekend. The fantasy OWL match that we had earlier, Ed had Alarm on, and with the double modifier,
Oh, it was
he
like
scored
500?
519 points.
Oh, that's killer.
Yeah. I thought Bruisin was a pretty safe bet because
Were
he
you
must
cruising?
not be named. I
Cruising
can't
for a
talk
bruising.
Bruisin for a bruising. Because I thought he who must not be named part deux,
Pardon?
like he would be the go-to starting. That was my theory behind it. And he was cheap. That's a thing with fantasy OWL now. Like you need that cheap.
Yeah, that cheap anchor, essentially.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was definitely one of those things where, I kind of got bit in the ass, and you're gonna get bit in the ass every week in fantasy, daily fantasy, because somebody you bank on is gonna sit. They just are. But you also will end up starting, if you don't go for that high risk, you're also gonna like you get inferior players, which sucks. So it's I mean it's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't type of situation. Like, could you build your whole team around people like Beast and Nevix who have no backups? Sure. But are you going to get the best fantasy players? No. You're not. So.
Well, there's no double modifier because, like with Fantasy Owl, you can still kind of lock yourself in if your double modifier person has a good game. But with this one, you're stuck with whatever. And I know certain players that get like, it's the point with Brucein. I think even the point with a lot of the teams that get 3-0 is that they're just not going to put up a lot of points.
Right.
and even like
And even the ones that 3-0, you know, they're not gonna put up a lot of points because it's just so fast. Unless it's like a close 3-0, which I wish there was a better way to see that. Because like in a football game, there's not a close 35-0. You know what I mean? Like that was a whooping. But like in Overwatch, there could be really close 3-0s where it was really close, but you just can't see that from the 3-0 score.
Right. I don't know. It'll be interesting when we go in again next week and see what sort of adjustments we can make. Because I know there's definitely been weeks on Draft Buff where a lot of the flex options do tend to put up more points, as opposed to, I know on daily a lot of the times the main supports have kind of been winning outright in regards to the point totals. And unfortunately, I was looking on High Noon, and I have not seen stats for week 10 being posted for just the stats tab. So I don't know if we're seeing similar things to see if flex supports are still beating out the main supports in that regard. And that kind of worries me because normally each week we set our unlimited drafts on the show. And I don't know when points are getting put on, so I don't know if that's actually been parsed through in the actual leagues or if it's just not showing on the stats tab. So that is a little concerning for me. So I don't know, Ed. Do you want to set up an unlimited lineup really quick, or should we just jump ahead to some of the marquee matches that we got for us?
Well, like I said, if I was to set an unlimited lineup this week, to me, I would set it up as the safe players.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Which I would start. I would take Beast. I would probably take Space. I would probably take Arc, Rhea.
Nope.
Those are the.
Nope. Rhea does
I
not
wouldn't
start.
take Rhea.
Not
He's
Rhea.
not been
Sorry.
playing.
Not Rhea. I'm thinking Krong.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Krong. That's where I would go with it.
Mhm.
You're not going to take Decay and Doa? Going against the San Francisco Shock?
I'm not taking both of them.
Bob and I
No.
were talking about this yesterday. I think there's a case for Dallas somehow pulling this out of their butt and winning.
There's definitely a case for it, but man, Krusty's smart, and I feel like Krusty's just gonna be like, I'll play your game, Arrow, and he's gonna put Striker in.
We had to
And it's gonna be Striker Decay.
we had to do the circular reason of okay, but wait, what if Krusty actually overthinks it and outthinks himself? That way.
And Dallas just comes out and plays straight meta, it's just who knows. But it is definitely Dallas has had a bone to pick with San Francisco for a while, so it could be a 4 or 5 map affair. The last time they went up against each other, it would have been 5 maps had Striker not hard carried the last 20 seconds of the first control map.
Mhm.
So. I mean, I think it could be. I think that matchup could be a good one to pick a few players from either side. But who knows who San Francisco is going to play?
Yeah, because they have been rotating quite a bit. I probably would imagine we'll see a ton of Ons just because Widow McCree is banned this week.
Yep.
So
No, keep away from Super. No Reinhardt this week.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just been so many moving pieces here. But with Unlimited, I've always just tended to go either towards a set roster that I just kind of stick with, and then there's other weeks where I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna throw something out there and see what the hell happens. So this week I'm thinking, all right, I know all the China teams play twice. I know everyone can beat everyone except maybe Shanghai in this case. But they've always been so scrappy. So I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna throw out Elsa and Kron. Elsa's actually been getting the vast majority, if not all of the playtime on the Hunters at the off tank position. as has Kron on the charge. DPS, I'll throw out Jinmu because he's probably going to be playing a ton of Pharaoh this week with double hit scan being banned. Nero has been starting full time, so he'd be my other pick. Then I'm looking at Shu and Bebe on the support line. And then, I'm kind of torn on captain. I was leaning more towards Void from the Shanghai Dragons because he's kind of been like their top earner so far in fantasy. So I don't know if this is gonna be like a high score in a week, but like I want to see how well China does stacked up against one another in a lineup to see how they fare compared to the field here. So who knows what will happen.
Yeah, I mean, you want to like, I'd be afraid to do Shanghai Dragons players just because I feel like they're going to 3-0. Maybe like players from Chengdu and Guangzhou because, they have chances to run those 5 map sets.
That is true, Bob, but when you're looking at the stats, even like Void in regards to like final blows and eliminations, he is up there
Killing it.
amongst the vast majority of the players in that region. So he's not like middle of the pack. He is above average in that regard. Probably even in like the top like 6 or 7, like
Wow.
across roles even. So that's why I kind of like leaned in more towards him than say one of the DPS players on the Dragons or even one of the support options that they got.
Do you remember a couple weeks ago when Reinforce said that he wasn't like a top 5 off tank?
Are we
Are
really
you still
quoting-
listening to Reinforce?
Man, Johnny the Wise has really been shedding his label lately.
That's why he
Johnny,
wears clown hair.
Yeah, Johnny, the power rankings have just been, I mean, they've never been good.
Mhm.
But he's getting a lot more entertaining.
Well,
This is true.
I mean, the casters present and no longer present have been getting pretty entertaining, if we should say. But I know with my lineup, I kind of lean more into the Shanghai. I went Birdring and Decay. I'm just shooting for the moon here because they don't typically win in a limited. So
Or ever.
that's job. So I won twice this week. I am the overall winner amongst our leagues this week.
Fly me to the
You're the
moon,
overall
let
winner
me
in our
sleep
leagues this
among
week
the
when only 3
stars.
people were playing.
And you were one of them, and you didn't win. Sorry.
Yeah, but Bob
Uh,
lost. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
By
Bob's
default.
undefeated.
By default, he loses.
I went Birdring Decay, and then my off tanks are Void and Space, Shaz, and then I'm looking at Izzyaki because Izzyaki I think has also been putting up some pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
I see.
I
The
think-
said.
I think Birdring and Decay are good DPS choices. Birdring has really kind of come into his own a little bit on the Gladiators. And then I don't want to take like Doa and Decay from Boston. They're from Dallas. Sorry, I offended Dallas fans there for a quick second. I apologize. But Decay, you gotta take Decay. But yeah, I'm not watching a lot of these Chinese games. Like, obviously not live.
Probably because they're on at 3 a.m.
Dude,
Yeah.
I'm watching a couple of them live, but I'm like hammered at that point.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my god, and because
Like, what the heck is changing?
is going on?
Well, it doesn't
Shit.
help that they're pretty messy games too. A lot of the time, like there's weeks where it'll be like, all right, here's our plan. We have a set like idea what we're gonna do, and there's other games where they're just like freaking just throwing stuff at the wall. Like the DPS are in 2 different corners of the map, and like tanks are everywhere. One healer's dead.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just-
imagine how hard language barriers are right now with people not sitting next to each other. I mean, like, because before, they could have little things where they could put people that don't speak English well together right here, and they could have little like hand signals for different things to each other, and they don't have any of that now.
Right on.
Yeah.
I know we are running a little long, but I do want to go over some of the marquee matches that we have going on this week. So just as a reminder, we do have matches Thursday through Sunday this week. So Ed, why don't you do a quick preview of what is looking like a pretty highly anticipated match, at least for Cali here.
Yeah. So, I'm going to pick two people to go through this one. So, Totem and Bob, I want your opinions on this one. The Gladiators Valiant. Who do you think? Do you think the Valiant are going to be those crafty little Valiant, or is the Gladiators going to kind of pull things through and actually perform? Totem, we'll
Me
start
go
with you.
first? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Bob. Bob, you go first.
I think Gladiators are going to win. I think that OGE played drunk last weekend and he's learned his lesson and he's not going to play drunk this weekend. I mean, the guy couldn't hit a shatter to save his life and he usually does a lot better. I think that there's more talent on the Gladiators team. I think there's more synergy. I think the Gladiators are going to come back from their loss this last week and destroy Valiant.
Yeah, both of these teams are trying to get their footing back after they pulled off, honestly, like a very big win over the Shock. And, the Shock in recent weeks have avenged both of those losses to these teams. And I honestly feel like the Valiant we probably undersold throughout the majority of the season. They've definitely been playing at a higher level than what we were expecting. But I really feel like the hit scan ban coming in this week will impact the Valiant a lot more than it will with the Gladiators, because KSP has just been an absolute madman out there. But the Gladiators have been doing some wonky things, like trying to go all in on the Mirror Doomfist, which is feast or famine. It's worked for them and also against them, but it hasn't necessarily been them going to the well too many times. So I'm enjoying the adjustments that we have been seeing from the Gladiators, and their front line out. I mean, obviously the main tank position has still been hit or miss, but Space has still been as consistent as ever, and I definitely give the nod to the Gladiators here. They have looked better over the course of the season.
And Space has really proved that he's not the one trick that we all thought he was. I mean, he's really, this season, he's looked good on everything that he's played.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'd probably say 3-1 Glads in this case.
3-1 Glads. All right. The next one we're going to go over is on Friday, where it's one of those matchups that nobody wins at. So I expect this to go rather quickly. So, Bob Ramses, I want your opinion. Boston Uprising versus the Toronto Defiant.
If Toronto lose, then give up. They did just lose their head coach today as well. Fifi is
Oh, didn't they?
Overwatch coach. Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that came out this afternoon. So I don't know. They have the talent. That's the thing with Toronto. They've had the talent this whole time. It's been more about actually like living up to that level instead of just being mediocre. If Defiant lose this game, then there is something very, very, very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be. Did they say who the interim coach is? Is it
No.
is it Surefour? They're just like we're just making Lane. Lane's going to do it.
They've people. I think people's talked about that. Platchat talked about that during the offseason. Like, at what point do we just get to where Surefour decides, nah, I'm going to do what I want?
Well, I'm looking at like who they still have on their coaching staff. They have Little Bo, who is their strategic coach. They have Albalis.
Is
and
Lobo's last name Peep?
No.
Boo.
That's a good
Boo
one.
this man. And Barrow, obviously, who is still on as the analyst / assistant coach. So they still have a couple of coaches on hand. I would probably assume Albalis in this case would get the nod for interim.
Other question: now that Montreal Rebellion is no more, are Roki and Mangerchu two-way players still, or are they have like full roster? Like,
I don't think we know. You're not starting them in fantasy, so that's really all that matters.
Yeah, I would say that
they probably retained him, more than likely.
Yeah, I think they would have to.
I'd say Toronto Defiant has to win this. I'd say Toronto Defiant definitely does win it and looks good doing it. I think this is their comeback game. And like Ramsey said, if Toronto loses, then we really have to just I don't know. Like, yeah, something's wrong behind the scenes, and because the talent is definitely there.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, because I know we are running long here. I'm just going to combine these next two games because really, do we all know all that much about them? So the Chengdu Hunters versus the Guangzhou Charge on Saturday, and the Guangzhou Charge versus the Hanzhou Spark on Sunday. So Ramses, who do you have winning the Hunters and Charge game?
The way the circle of parity works, I think Chengdu wins this game.
It's a circle of parity.
I agree as well, just because I think Jinmu being able to perform well on the fair this week will really be the difference maker.
Yeah, last time they fought, it did go to map 5. Charge did win it. But if we're gonna continue the level of parity that we're seeing, I'm really pulling for the Hunters here.
Yep. And then the next one, the Charge versus the Spark, they've played each other twice. They've each won once. So Totem, who do you have in the Charge versus Spark?
I don't have a coin to flip.
Ryan's out, monkey's in.
That is true. I gotta go with the Shui.
Yep.
And like Ramses pointed out last night, there's no hit scan for Happy to play.
So would you say he's not happy? I mean, I'm picking Spark in this one. I think I had Spark pick before this, like before the hero pools. I think the Spark are a better team than a lot of people think.
Hey Ed, who's your starting off tank?
God, I'm just gonna go with it's gonna be Rhea this week.
It's been saucy in the last couple days.
I'm going with Rhea this week. I think they're gonna run
Rhea E.
Monkey Diva.
Rhea E.
Rhea. Really. Really Rhea. So yeah, that's it. We have the games spread out more so this week, which I like.
But Bob hates.
Yeah, I just don't like it because I had plans Thursday and Friday that I had to change up.
To do what? You're supposed to stay in your goddamn house.
I do a lot of stuff online, dude.
You can still have this on in the background.
Also true. But we do need to wrap things up because I know Bob has to raid. So best thing to do, guys, is of course with any podcast out there, head over to iTunes, write and leave us a review. We are always looking for ways to improve the show. Obviously, we've been off for a month, so got a little bit of rust to shake off. Honestly, been a while since we've all sat down and actually talked fantasy OWL, partially because there was a couple of weeks there where we didn't even know what the status of that thing was even going to be. But we are open ear, so reach out to us on that front. If you're looking for additional Overwatch-related content, check out Overwatch Recall, which has a episodic podcast listing every Sunday night. And to keep up to date with that, follow Recall on Twitter at OWRecall. Now, of course, if you are looking to support our podcast network, consider checking out our Patreon page. We do have tiers starting at just $1 a month, and more info can be found at patreon.com/OWLnetwork, where you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons of Daniel, Owl, Kesha, Agent Life, and 044 in helping our network grow. And of course, we have a multitude of ways how you guys can reach out to us personally. So Ed, why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know how they can do that?
All right. So you can reach us over on email at contact@owlandshow.com. On Twitter and at OWL by the numbers. We do have a website, and that's owlandshow.com. We do have a YouTube, youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. Can I delete the C that you have after?
Sure.
I'm just going to delete stuff in our notes. Unlike youtube.com/c/overwatch. No, that makes no sense.
Well, I mean, C for channel, but it's still both
Whatever.
work.
Whatever. This is easier for Ednar to read, and that's really all that matters. We do have a Discord, and that's discord.me/OWL show. We are a Twitch affiliate, so come join us on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWL show. Help our podcast out even further by subscribing with your Amazon Prime. We do stream pretty regularly, so that's Overwatch League Network. Airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. The show OWL by the Numbers airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific. Heroes Never Die, the variety show Totem and I do, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then me and Totem have another podcast called Tavern Tales, which is a Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast, airs Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific over at twitch.tv/TavernTalesHS. You can reach me personally on Twitter at Ednar83. I changed it because I do things more than just Overwatch.
Is it because 83 podcasts?
Yes.
He's not
or I
there
was
yet.
born in 1983. Close.
It's actually
and-
83 personalities.
Yes. And then you can reach me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Edinar. Bob, where can they find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. Where can we find you, Ramses?
You can find me at Ramses_OW. You can find my show at PushPointPod.
God, I can't believe you guys have been going for a year.
It's weird. You don't think about it, and I was like, no, like it's been a year.
Just wait, Ramses, until you get to 4 years.
Oh gosh.
then come back to me. But anyways, you can find myself, Totally Drunk, on Twitter at TotallyDrunkCTR, and when I'm streaming on Twitch, which is typically Hearthstone Battlegrounds, that is at twitch.tv/TotallyDrunk. So with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for joining us on this return episode of OWL by the Numbers, and we hope to see you guys back tomorrow night when we talk Echo, and competitive mode in arcade, ? Which is something they added today. More on that tomorrow on Heroes Never Die. Take care and have a good night.
Bye.